Welcome, beloved soul. As the world around you grows quiet, it's time to lay down your burdens, to rest your heart, and let the Word of God guide you gently into peace. Find a comfortable position. Close your eyes. Let your body sink into your bed, heavy and calm. Take a slow, deep breath in through your nose. Hold it for just a moment, and exhale softly through your mouth. Feel your shoulders release, your jaw unclench, and your heartbeat steady. Now imagine a soft golden light, the light of God's presence, descending slowly from above. It rests on your head, your shoulders, your chest, flowing down through your arms, your hands, your legs, your feet. This is God's peace, filling you. You are safe, you are loved, you are not alone. As you rest in that stillness, we begin our story, a story of courage, faith, and freedom. The story of Moses, a man who faced fear, yet trusted God completely. The baby in the river. Long ago, in the land of Egypt, a cruel pharaoh ruled with an iron hand. He feared the growing strength of the Israelites, God's people, and ordered that every newborn Hebrew boy be cast into the Nile. But among them was a baby boy, born of a woman named Jochebed. She looked at her child and saw something special, a light in his eyes, a promise in his cry. She could not let him die. So she hid him for 3 months. And when she could hide him no longer, she made a small basket of reeds, sealed it with tar, and placed her baby inside. With trembling hands, she set the basket among the reeds of the riverbank and watched as the current carried her child away. She whispered a prayer. "Lord, keep him safe." As you breathe deeply now, imagine that basket floating gently upon calm waters, each ripple a reminder that even when we let go, God holds what we love. Take a breath in and exhale slowly, letting go of whatever you've been carrying today. For just like that baby, your life too is held in God's steady hands. The prince of Egypt, Pharaoh's daughter, came down to the river to bathe, and there she found the basket. When she opened it, the baby wept, and her heart softened. "This is one of the Hebrew babies," she said, but instead of harm, she showed mercy. She named him Moses, saying, "I drew him out of the water." And so Moses was raised in Pharaoh's palace, clothed in fine linen, and taught the ways of the Egyptians. Yet, in his heart, he never forgot who he was, a child of Israel. Years passed. One day, Moses saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave. Anger rose within him, and he struck the man down. Afraid of Pharaoh's wrath, Moses fled into the desert. He wandered through the wilderness, tired, hungry, lost. But even in exile, God was preparing him. If you've ever felt lost, far from where you belong, remember Moses. God does his best work in the wilderness. Breathe in peace and exhale all fear. Even in lonely places, you are never abandoned. The burning bush. One quiet morning, Moses was tending sheep on Mount Horeb. The sun was warm and the wind gentle. Then he saw something strange, a bush engulfed in flame, yet not burning up. He turned aside, curious, and from within the fire a voice spoke. "Moses, Moses." He answered, "Here I am." "Take off your sandals," the voice said, "for the place where you stand is holy ground." "I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." Moses trembled. And the Lord said, "I have seen the suffering of my people in Egypt. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring them out of bondage." Moses whispered, "Who am I that I should go?" And God replied, "I will be with you." Let those words echo in your heart tonight. I will be with you. As you breathe, let that promise settle into your soul. Whatever you face tomorrow, God will be with you. His presence burns brightly, never consumed, never leaving you in the dark. Let my people go. Moses returned to Egypt, his heart both trembling and strong. He stood before Pharaoh, the mightiest ruler on earth, and said, "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, let my people go." But Pharaoh's heart was hard. He laughed, and the people's suffering grew worse. Yet God's power would soon be known. Through signs and wonders, plagues and miracles, he showed Pharaoh that he alone is Lord. Water turned to blood, darkness fell upon the land, and finally the night of Passover came, when death passed over every house marked by the blood of the Lamb. Then Pharaoh's heart broke, and he said, "Go." Sometimes freedom begins in the middle of chaos. Sometimes God shakes the ground before he opens the way. If you are in a season of shaking, breathe deeply. God is moving. He is setting something free inside you, too. The Red Sea. The Israelites journeyed out of Egypt, led by Moses. But soon Pharaoh changed his mind and sent his army to chase them. The people saw the sea before them and the soldiers behind them, and they cried out in fear. Moses lifted his staff and said, "Do not be afraid. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord." Then God parted the sea, the waters rising like walls on either side, and his people walked across on dry ground. When the Egyptians followed, the waters returned, and Pharaoh's army was swept away. As you breathe slowly now, imagine walking that path through the sea. On either side, waves rise like glass, shimmering in moonlight. You step forward, each breath a step of faith. You feel the wind, the mist, the stillness of divine power. You are safe between those waves. God is parting your sea too, making a way where there was none. Breathe in hope and exhale all fear. The wilderness journey. After the sea, the people journeyed through the wilderness. They grew weary, thirsty, and afraid. But God never left them. He sent manna from heaven, bread like dew. He brought water from a rock, and by day he led them with a cloud, by night with a pillar of fire. He guided them gently, one step at a time. Sometimes God doesn't show the full map, only the next step. That's faith. As you lie here tonight, maybe you don't see the whole path ahead, but rest knowing that the same God who led Moses is leading you too. Breathe in trust and exhale worry. Trust that he knows the way. The mountaintop. It had been months since the people of Israel walked out of Egypt. Led by Moses, they had crossed the Red Sea, watched Pharaoh's armies vanish beneath the waves, and now they wandered through the wilderness. By day, a pillar of cloud led them. By night, a pillar of fire. They followed wherever God guided. But in the desert silence, fear often crept in. The people grew restless, forgetting how far God had brought them. They longed for certainty, for a voice to guide them clearly. One day, God spoke to Moses, "Come up to me on the mountain." And so Moses climbed the rocky path of Mount Sinai, a mountain veiled in mist and mystery. As you listen, imagine yourself walking beside him. The air is cool and dry. The wind hums softly across the stones. Each step feels slow, steady, sacred. You feel the earth beneath your feet. You feel the nearness of something holy. At the summit, the clouds thickened like smoke. Thunder rumbled low across the sky. Lightning flickered in the distance. Not frightening, but awe-inspiring. And through it all, a voice, not loud, yet powerful enough to stir the soul. "Moses," said the Lord, "I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. The ground trembled, but Moses stood still, wrapped in peace. Then, from that cloud of glory, God began to speak the words that would shape his people for generations. Commandments not of punishment, but of love, order, and holiness. Take a deep breath now, and imagine the clouds glowing with heavenly light, soft, golden, radiant. Each word spoken from God's mouth carved gently into your heart. The 10 Commandments. The first commandment, I am the Lord your God. You shall have no other gods before me. Feel that truth settle in your spirit. There is one God, constant, faithful, eternal. Let go of distractions and rest, knowing he alone is enough. Breathe in his presence and exhale everything that is not of him. The second commandment, you shall not make for yourself an idol, nor bow down to any image. We live in a world full of noise and glitter, but peace is found in stillness when you set your heart only on the Creator. Breathe deeply, inhale devotion, exhale distraction. The third commandment, you shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God. His name is sacred, a whisper of power, a word of love. Let it rest upon your lips with reverence and calm. Whisper quietly, Yahweh, my God, my peace. The fourth commandment, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Even God rested, and so must you. Tonight is your Sabbath, your time of peace and renewal. Every breath draws you deeper into rest. Every heartbeat slows in his rhythm of grace. The fifth commandment, honor your father and your mother. Think of those who came before you, their stories, their sacrifices, their love. Offer silent gratitude, even if they were imperfect. Forgive them, bless them, and rest in peace with them in your heart. The sixth commandment, you shall not murder. This is more than a command to spare life. It is a call to protect peace. Be gentle with others and with yourself. Tonight, let go of harsh thoughts. Breathe in kindness. Exhale judgment. The seventh commandment, you shall not commit adultery. True love is sacred, a promise rooted in faith and truth. Let your heart be pure, your intentions steady. As you rest, ask God to fill your soul with loyalty, patience, and love that never fails. The eighth commandment, you shall not steal. Be content with what you have. God has given you enough, more than enough. Whisper gently, I am grateful, I am blessed. The ninth commandment, you shall not bear false witness. Speak truth, even in silence. Let honesty live in your heart. May your words tomorrow be gentle, your thoughts kind, your spirit sincere. The 10th commandment, you shall not covet. Do not long for what others have. Peace grows where gratitude blooms. Inhale gratitude. Exhale envy. You have all that you need. And tonight in the stillness you have God. And that is everything. The covenant of peace. When God finished speaking, he gave Moses 2 stone tablets engraved by his own hand. Moses stood there, bathed in the golden glow of heaven's light, the voice of God echoing in his heart. The mountain was still, the fire gentle, the wind calm. Imagine yourself there, standing in that holy stillness. The same God who spoke to Moses now whispers peace to your soul. Be still and know that I am God. Let those words repeat in your heart as your body sinks deeper into rest. Be still and know that He is God, the presence of God. When Moses came down from the mountain, his face shone with light. The people saw him and knew he had been with God. They built a tabernacle, a sacred place for his presence to dwell among them. And from that day on, God walked with his people, guiding them, forgiving them, loving them endlessly. Tonight, that same presence surrounds you. He is here beside you, softly, silently, watching over you. You are his dwelling place now. His spirit rests upon you like warm sunlight. You are never alone. Take one more slow, deep breath and exhale into total peace. Sleep in his peace. As you drift towards sleep, imagine resting in the arms of God, his light above you, his peace around you, his word within you. The same hands that carved the 10 Commandments now cradle your heart. You are his beloved child. You are forgiven. You are safe. You are free. Sleep now in his presence. Rest deeply in his love. And when you awaken, sleep now in his presence. Rest deeply in his love. And when you awaken, may your heart be filled with peace and your spirit renewed in faith. Welcome, dear listener. Tonight, let your heart rest as we journey through one of the most inspiring stories in all of Scripture, the story of Joseph. A tale of dreams, trials, and triumphs, of betrayal and forgiveness, of how God can turn the darkest moments into the most beautiful blessings. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and as you drift into rest, allow these words to guide you into peace, comfort, and faith. In the land of Canaan lived a young man named Joseph, the beloved son of Jacob, also called Israel. Joseph was the 11th of 12 brothers, yet his father loved him most deeply, for he was the child of his old age, and the firstborn of Rachel, his cherished wife. Jacob made Joseph a coat of many colors, a beautiful robe woven with love. When his brothers saw it, jealousy burned in their hearts. But Joseph was innocent and full of dreams, divine dreams. One night he told his brothers, "Listen to the dream I had. We were binding sheaves in the field, and suddenly my sheaf stood upright while yours gathered around and bowed down to it." His brothers scowled. "Will you indeed reign over us?" they said. But the dreams did not stop there. Another time, Joseph said, "I dreamed that the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowed down to me." Even Jacob rebuked him, but he also wondered, could this be from God? And though Joseph did not yet understand, God was already weaving a greater story, one that would save nations. One day, Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers as they tended flocks near Shechem. As Joseph approached from afar, the brothers saw him coming. Their jealousy turned to hatred. "Here comes the dreamer," they hissed. "Let us kill him and see what becomes of his dreams." But Reuben, the eldest, pleaded, "Do not shed his blood. Throw him into this pit instead." He planned to rescue Joseph later. So when Joseph arrived, his brothers stripped him of his colorful robe and cast him into a dry well, a pit in the wilderness. As he cried out for help, they sat down to eat. Then a caravan of Ishmaelites passed by, traveling to Egypt. Judah said, "What will we gain if we kill our brother? Let us sell him instead." And so, for 20 pieces of silver, they sold Joseph into slavery. They dipped his coat in goat's blood and brought it to their father. Jacob wept bitterly, believing his son was dead. But God's plan was still unfolding. In Egypt, Joseph was sold to Potiphar, captain of Pharaoh's guard. Even in a foreign land, the Lord was with him. Joseph worked faithfully, and soon Potiphar placed everything he owned under Joseph's care. The household prospered because of him. But Potiphar's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph. "Lie with me," she whispered. Joseph refused. "How could I do this wicked thing and sin against God?" Day after day she tempted him, until one day she caught his cloak as he fled from her presence. Angered by rejection, she accused him falsely. Potiphar's anger burned, and Joseph was thrown into prison. Yet even there the Lord was with Joseph. In the dim light of the dungeon, God's favor never left him. The keeper of the prison trusted Joseph with all the prisoners, for everything he touched seemed blessed. One morning, Joseph found two prisoners troubled, Pharaoh's chief butler and chief baker. They had dreamed strange dreams but could not understand them. Joseph said gently, "Interpretations belong to God. Tell me your dreams." The butler spoke first. "In my dream, a vine had 3 branches. It budded and blossomed, and I pressed the grapes into Pharaoh's cup." Joseph smiled softly. "In 3 days, Pharaoh will restore you to your position." The baker then shared his dream. 3 baskets of bread were on my head, and the birds ate from them. Joseph's expression saddened. "In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head." And it came to pass exactly as Joseph said. But when the butler was restored, he forgot Joseph. 2 long years passed, yet God never forgot. One night, Pharaoh himself had 2 troubling dreams of fat cows devoured by thin ones and healthy ears of grain consumed by withered ones. None of Egypt's wise men could explain them. Then the butler remembered Joseph. He said to Pharaoh, "There is a man in prison who interprets dreams, and what he says comes true." Joseph was quickly brought before Pharaoh. Clean-shaven and dressed in fine linen, he bowed low. Pharaoh said, "I have dreamed a dream, and no one can interpret it." Joseph replied humbly, "It is not in me. God will give Pharaoh an answer of peace." Pharaoh told his dreams, and Joseph said, "The 2 dreams are one." God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. 7 years of plenty will come, followed by 7 years of famine. He continued, "Let Pharaoh appoint a wise man to store food during the years of abundance, so the nation will survive the famine." Pharaoh was astonished. "Can we find such a man as this, in whom is the Spirit of God?" And so Joseph, once a slave and prisoner, was made ruler over all Egypt, second only to Pharaoh himself. From the pit to the palace. Years passed, and just as Joseph said, the famine spread over the land, even to Canaan, where Jacob and his sons lived. Hearing that grain was in Egypt, Jacob sent his sons to buy food, all except Benjamin, Joseph's youngest brother. When they arrived, they bowed before Joseph, not recognizing him, fulfilling the dream he had as a boy. But Joseph recognized them. He tested their hearts to see if they had changed. He wept in secret, torn between love and memory. Finally, after a series of tests, he revealed himself. "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt." They trembled in fear, but Joseph said, "Do not be afraid. You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to save many lives." And he embraced them, forgiving completely. Joseph sent for his father Jacob, who came to Egypt with all his family. When they met, father and son embraced and wept for a long time. Jacob said, "Now I am ready to die, since I have seen your face and know that you are alive." Joseph provided for his family, giving them the best land in Goshen. Under his care, they prospered. Before Jacob's death, he blessed his sons, giving Joseph a double portion. And when Jacob died, Joseph mourned deeply. Even after many years, when his brothers feared revenge, Joseph said again, "Fear not. Am I in the place of God? As for you, you meant evil, but God turned it into good." And thus, Joseph's story became a shining example that faith and forgiveness can transform even the darkest moments. As the night deepens and your eyes grow heavy, remember the story of Joseph, A story of patience in the pit, faith in the prison, and triumph in the palace. When life feels unfair, when dreams seem delayed, trust that God is still working behind the scenes. He is the same God who turned sorrow into purpose, betrayal into blessing, and dreams into destiny. Rest now in that peace, for even in silence, God is writing your story too. There was once a man named Jonah, a prophet from a small town near the rolling hills of Israel. He lived a quiet life. He prayed each morning as the sun rose, thanking God for the day. He spoke with the people in his village, helped the poor, and often walked near the sea when his heart felt heavy. Jonah loved peace, and in those days peace felt like enough. But peace is not the same as purpose. One day, as he sat beneath a tree watching the waves touch the shore, the wind began to shift. A stillness fell over him, a silence so deep that even the sea seemed to listen. Then a voice, clear and steady, yet soft as a whisper of light, spoke to his heart. "Jonah, son of Amittai, arise, go to the great city of Nineveh. Their wickedness has come before me. Tell them to turn from their evil ways." Jonah froze. His heart pounded in his chest. He knew the voice, the unmistakable call of God. But his mind was filled with fear. Nineveh was far away and dangerous. It was a city known for cruelty, for power, for sin. Jonah whispered to himself, "Surely, Lord, not me, not there." He looked to the horizon, the golden light fading into deep blue, and in his heart, a storm began to form. That night, Jonah packed what little he had. He couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the city of Nineveh, tall, shadowed, filled with voices crying out in the dark. He wanted to forget the call. He wanted to silence the voice. So, before dawn, he left. He walked down to the port of Joppa, where ships rested like sleeping giants on the quiet sea. The air smelled of salt and smoke. Sailors shouted, ropes creaked, and the gulls called out over the water. Jonah found a captain preparing a ship bound for Tarshish, far, far away from Nineveh. He handed the man a few coins and said, "I need passage." "Anywhere but here," the captain nodded, and Jonah stepped aboard. As the ship set sail, Jonah watched the coastline fade behind him, the land of his people disappearing into the mist. He breathed deeply, whispering, "Now, maybe I can rest." But the wind, once gentle, began to stir again. By nightfall, the sea turned restless. The moon hid behind dark clouds. The wind howled like a beast let loose from heaven itself. The sailors rushed to and fro, tightening ropes, shouting prayers to their gods. Lightning flashed across the sky, revealing Jonah's pale face. The ship rocked violently, waves crashing against the deck, spraying cold water into their eyes. Jonah gripped the wooden mast and felt his stomach twist. He knew what this was. It wasn't nature's fury. It was mercy in disguise. The storm grew louder, the waves rising higher. The captain cried out, "Throw the cargo overboard. We'll sink if this continues." They obeyed, tossing crates and barrels into the raging sea. Still, the storm did not stop. Jonah's heart ached. He fell to his knees and whispered, "Lord, I know. I hear you." He climbed to the deck and faced the terrified crew. Rain poured down in sheets, and thunder cracked like the voice of judgment. Jonah cried out, "This storm is because of me. I have disobeyed the God who made the sea and the sky. Throw me into the water, and it will calm." The sailors hesitated, but as the waves grew even wilder, they had no choice. With trembling hands, they lifted Jonah and cast him into the dark, roaring sea. Instantly, silence. The wind died, the waves stilled, the sky cleared, and Jonah sank deeper and deeper into the still, dark depths. The water was cold, the light above grew dim. Jonah's lungs burned and his strength faded. But even here, in the place of his greatest failure, God was near. From the depths came a shadow, large and slow-moving, a great fish sent by the Creator himself. It swallowed Jonah whole. Inside it was dark, yet somehow peaceful. Jonah could still breathe, still think, still pray. He whispered in the darkness, "From the deep I called to you, and you heard me. Though I fled, you found me. Though I ran, you reached me. Even in the belly of the sea, you are here." For 3 days and 3 nights, Jonah sat within the belly of the great fish, safe, alive, surrounded by silence and the heartbeat of God's mercy. And then, after 3 long days, the voice returned. It was gentle now, not a command, not a rebuke, but a whisper of love. "Jonah, my plans for you still stand. My love does not give up." The fish stirred. It rose toward the surface, toward the light. And with a mighty rush of water, it released Jonah onto the shore. He fell onto the sand, coughing, crying, trembling. The air smelled of salt and grace. Jonah lifted his eyes to the heavens and whispered, "Lord, I am yours. Wherever you send me, I will go." The moment Jonah hit the water, the sea swallowed him whole. The world above grew faint, the shouting of sailors fading into silence. Waves rolled above his head, cold currents pulled at his feet, and all around him was darkness. But as Jonah sank, the wind began to calm, the clouds parted. The ship, rocking gently now, was surrounded by stillness. The sailors stared in awe at the silent sea. They had seen the power of the God of heaven, and they bowed, whispering prayers to the one Jonah had tried to flee. But Jonah was alone, drifting downward, sinking through the endless blue. Jonah's body grew heavy, his thoughts slower, his lungs burning for air. He looked upward. The light above was distant now, like a fading dream. "This is the end," he thought. "I have run too far." And yet, even as he thought it, the sea began to stir around him. A shadow moved through the depths, vast and graceful, its body gliding through the water like a living mountain. Then, with a soundless rush, the creature opened its mouth, and darkness covered Jonah once more. When Jonah awoke, everything was still. He could feel the slow rhythm of a heartbeat, the gentle sway of water, the air heavy but breathable. He was alive, inside the belly of a great fish, a creature formed by God's own command. For a long while, Jonah said nothing. He sat in silence, listening to the deep hum of the ocean around him. In the darkness, he began to remember the sound of the storm, the cries of the sailors, the moment he fell into the sea. And then something stirred within him, not fear, but sorrow, a deep, aching regret. He realized that even here, in the very place he thought would be his end, he had been saved. Jonah knelt on the soft ground beneath him, and in the stillness he began to pray. "In my distress I called to you, Lord, and you answered me. From deep in the realm of the dead I cried for help, and you listened to my cry. You cast me into the heart of the seas, and the currents swirled about me. I said, I have been banished from your sight. Yet I will look again toward your holy temple. When my life was fainting away, I remembered you. Salvation comes from the Lord." As Jonah's prayer echoed in the dark, the waters around him seemed to move in rhythm with his words. He felt peace, a peace that only surrender can bring. He no longer wished to flee. He no longer wished to hide. He only wished to obey. After 3 days and 3 nights, the great fish stirred. It began to rise through the dark, through the cool, through the layers of the deep, toward the light above. Jonah felt his body sway with the movement, his heart racing not with fear, but with hope. The creature broke through the surface with a mighty splash. The waves sparkled in the morning sun, and the air was bright with the scent of salt and new beginnings. Then, with one great motion, the whale opened its mouth and released Jonah onto the shore. Jonah tumbled onto the warm sand, coughing, trembling, weeping. He looked at his hands, his skin pale from the sea, but alive. He pressed his face into the sand and whispered, "Thank you, Lord, for not giving up on me." The sun rose higher, drying the sea from Jonah's skin. He sat in the sand for a long time, listening to the waves rolling gently against the shore. And then, softly, clearly, the same voice he had heard before spoke again. "Jonah, arise, go to Nineveh." The same words as before, but this time they sounded different. There was no fear in Jonah's heart, only peace, only gratitude. He stood looking at the horizon, the land of Nineveh far beyond it, and he nodded. "Yes, Lord," he whispered, "I will go." And so Jonah's journey began again, not as a man running from God, but as a man walking toward his mercy. The storm had not been punishment. It had been rescue. The whale had not been judgment. It had been grace. For sometimes the places that feel like endings are really just the beginning of a new obedience. The morning sun warmed the sand beneath Jonah's feet. Each step felt like a prayer. Each mile brought him closer to the city he once feared to face. He walked past valleys and villages, through deserts that shimmered like gold under the heat. And as he walked, he thought about everything that had happened: the storm, the sea, the second chance. He realized something beautiful. The same God who ruled the oceans also ruled the hearts of men, and that God, patient, gentle, and full of love, was giving him another chance to obey. After days of travel, Jonah finally saw it. Nineveh, a vast city stretching far and wide, its walls tall and strong, its towers gleaming in the afternoon sun. It was alive with sound. Markets filled with voices, animals braying, the hum of 1,000 lives unfolding at once. Jonah stopped at the gate and took a deep breath. "Lord," he whispered, "this time I will speak what you tell me to speak." Jonah entered the city. He walked its crowded streets, dust rising beneath his sandals, faces turning toward him in curiosity. Then he lifted his voice. "Hear the word of the Lord," he called. "In 40 days, Nineveh shall be overthrown." The words echoed between the stone walls. People stopped. Merchants paused their trading. Children looked up from their games. Jonah's message spread like wind through the city, from street to street, from home to home, until it reached the palace itself. There the king of Nineveh sat upon his throne, a man of power, yet not beyond the reach of truth. When he heard the prophet's warning, he stood and removed his royal robe. He put on sackcloth and sat down in ashes. Then he made a decree to all his people: "Let everyone, young and old, rich and poor, turn from evil and violence. Let no one eat or drink. Let every heart cry out to God, and perhaps he will show us mercy." And so it happened. The people of Nineveh, the great and feared city, bowed their heads in repentance. They fasted, they prayed, They wept. For days the sound of prayer filled the air, not of guilt, but of longing, a deep desire to change. Jonah watched it all unfold, and in his heart he knew they meant it. They truly wanted to turn from their ways. High above in the heavens, God looked upon the city. He saw their hearts, their tears, their humility, their sincerity, and he was moved with compassion. The judgment he had planned was lifted. The city was spared. Peace filled the streets once more. Children laughed again. Life returned. But Jonah was troubled. He sat outside the city under the heat of the sun, and he frowned. "Lord," he said, "didn't I say this would happen? This is why I ran before. I knew you are a God of mercy, slow to anger, full of compassion. But how can you forgive them so easily?" Jonah built a small shelter of branches and sat beneath it, still hoping perhaps that God might change his mind. As Jonah sat in the hot sun, God caused a leafy plant to grow beside him, broad and green, its shade cooling Jonah's weary head. Jonah smiled for the first time in days. He felt comforted, grateful. But the next morning, God sent a tiny worm. It chewed through the vine, and by midday the plant withered away. The sun beat down harshly once again. Jonah groaned in frustration. "It's better for me to die than to live," he cried. And then, softly, God spoke. "Jonah, you are angry about the plant, though you did not make it grow. You cared for it for one night, and yet, should I not care for Nineveh, that great city where more than 100,000 souls live, and do not know right from wrong?" Jonah sat in silence. The wind blew through the desert, and in that stillness he understood. The God who had saved him from the sea had now saved a city from destruction. Mercy wasn't just for Jonah, it was for everyone. And so Jonah learned that God's heart is larger than ours can imagine. He is the God of second chances, for the prophet who runs and for the city that repents. He is the God who saves, who forgives, and who loves without end. As you drift to sleep tonight, remember Jonah's journey. The storms you face, the lessons you learn, and the mercy you receive all remind us that God's compassion reaches deeper than the sea and wider than the sky. The desert was quiet that night. Only the wind moved, whispering softly through the tents of a wandering man. His name was Abram, a shepherd, a man of peace, living among his flocks in the land of Haran. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a voice spoke to him, not from the earth, but from the heavens. "Abram," the voice said, "leave your country, your people, and your father's household. Go to the land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing." Abram felt the wind still. He looked toward the stars, his heart both trembling and at peace. He was 75 years old. He had no children, no heir to his name. And yet, he believed. So at dawn, Abram gathered his wife, Sarai, his nephew Lot, his servants and animals, and he began a journey into the unknown. Days turned to weeks, weeks to months. They crossed deserts, climbed rocky hills, and camped under skies so wide that the stars seemed to sing. Everywhere they went, Abram built altars, simple stones stacked together, to remind himself of the one who guided his steps. In Canaan, God spoke again. "To your descendants I will give this land." Abram fell to his knees. He was a stranger in a foreign place, but God called it his future home. Time passed. Seasons came and went. The promise still lingered, but the years stretched long. Abram and Sarai grew older. Their tents were filled with laughter from their servants' children, but none of their own. One night, Abram looked up at the stars and sighed, "Lord, what will you give me, seeing I have no child? My heir is a servant in my house." Then the Lord said to him, "Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your very great reward." And he took Abram outside and said, "Look up at the sky and count the stars, if indeed you can count them. So shall your descendants be." Abram's heart trembled. He looked at the countless lights above him, each one shining like a promise yet to come. And Scripture says, Abram believed the Lord, and it was credited to him as righteousness. Sometime later, as Abram prayed beside his altar, God appeared to him in a vision. A deep sleep fell upon him, and in that stillness, a flame like a torch passed between the pieces of a sacrifice. It was the symbol of a covenant, a divine promise sealed not by words, but by the presence of God himself. And the Lord said, "Know for certain that your descendants will be strangers in a land not their own. But after 400 years they will come out with great possessions. To your descendants I give this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river Euphrates." When Abram awoke, he knew he was no longer just a wanderer. He was the bearer of a divine destiny. Years later, when Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared again and said, "I am God Almighty. Walk before me and be blameless. No longer shall your name be Abram, but Abraham, for I have made you the father of many nations. And your wife Sarai, she shall be called Sarah. I will bless her and give you a son by her." Abraham fell on his face and laughed with joy. He could hardly believe it, but faith filled his heart once more. And just as God said, the promise came true. One quiet morning, Sarah bore a son. The tents were filled with laughter, and Abraham held the child in his arms, his eyes full of tears. He named him Isaac, which means laughter, because in their old age, when all hope seemed gone, God had done the impossible. The promise was alive in the tiny heartbeat of a newborn child. The afternoon sun blazed over the plains of Mamre. Abraham sat in the shade of his tent, watching the gentle sway of the oaks in the heat of the day. Then he looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. Without hesitation, Abraham ran to meet them. He bowed low to the ground and said, "My Lord, if I have found favor in your eyes, do not pass by your servant. Let me bring water to wash your feet and food to refresh your hearts." The men agreed, and Abraham hurried into the tent. "Quick," he said to Sarah, "prepare the finest flour, make bread." He chose a tender calf, had it prepared, and set a meal before his guests. They ate beneath the trees, while Abraham stood nearby, his heart filled with wonder, for he knew these were no ordinary travelers. The presence of the Lord was among them. As they rested, one of the visitors turned to Abraham and asked, "Where is Sarah, your wife?" "She is in the tent," Abraham replied. Then the man smiled and said, "I will surely return to you, and Sarah, your wife, shall have a son." Inside the tent, Sarah heard and laughed softly. She was old, far beyond the age of childbearing. But the Lord said, "Why did Sarah laugh? Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time I will return, and Sarah shall have a son." And with that the Lord reminded Abraham once again. His promises never fail. But as the meal ended, the tone changed. The Lord's gaze turned toward the distant valley, toward the plains of Sodom and Gomorrah. As the men rose to leave, the Lord spoke quietly, as though thinking aloud. "Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do? For I have chosen him, that he may teach his children to keep my ways." Then the Lord said, "The outcry against Sodom and Gomorra is great. Their sin is very grievous. I will go down and see if what they have done is as bad as the cry that has reached me." The two angels turned and began walking toward the valley, but Abraham remained standing before the Lord. A silence hung between heaven and earth. The air was still, the sky glowing with the last light of day. Abraham's heart trembled. His nephew Lot lived in that city. Would God destroy them all? Then Abraham stepped forward, a simple shepherd speaking to the Almighty. "Will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked?" he asked softly. "Suppose there are 50 righteous people in the city. Will you really destroy it and not spare it for their sake?" The Lord replied, "If I find 50 righteous in Sodom, I will spare the whole place for their sake." Abraham bowed low again. "Now that I have been so bold to speak to the Lord, though I am nothing but dust and ashes, what if the number is 5 less than 50? Will you destroy the city for lack of 5? The Lord answered, "If I find 45, I will not destroy it." Abraham's voice grew quiet but steady. "What if only 40 are found there?" And the Lord said, "For the sake of 40, I will not do it." Abraham continued, his words trembling, his heart breaking for the people below. "What if 30? I will not do it if I find 30. What if 20? For the sake of 20, I will not destroy it." And finally, Abraham whispered, "Lord, what if only 10 are found there?" The Lord's reply came gentle and full of mercy. "For the sake of 10, I will not destroy the city." Then the Lord departed, and Abraham stood alone beneath the quiet sky, his prayer echoing softly in the wind. That night, Abraham returned to his tent. The fire flickered beside him. Sarah slept in peace. But Abraham's eyes stayed on the horizon, where the faint glow of the cities could be seen far away. He had spoken to God, and God had listened. Though Abraham could not change the hearts of men, his prayer had revealed something even greater, that God's mercy is never far and his justice is always tempered by love. The night deepened, the stars shone bright, the same stars God once told Abraham to count. And as he looked upon them, he whispered, "You are righteous, Lord." Your mercy reaches farther than the sky, Abraham understood now. Prayer was not about changing God's mind. It was about drawing closer to his heart. The sun was setting beyond the hills of Canaan. Two travelers, clothed like ordinary men, but carrying the quiet weight of heaven, walked down the dusty road toward the valley. Before them lay Sodom, its walls shining in the distance, its streets filled with music, laughter, and voices of the night. The people had long forgotten the ways of God. They worshipped pleasure, mocked righteousness, and cared nothing for the stranger or the poor. Yet, inside that city lived one man who still believed, Lot, the nephew of Abraham. As the angels entered through the city gate, Lot sat there as he often did, watching the travelers come and go. He saw them, and something stirred in his heart. They looked like men, but there was something different in their presence, a quiet strength, a peace that didn't belong to the city. Lot rose quickly and bowed to the ground. "My lords," he said, "please turn aside to your servant's house. Spend the night there, wash your feet, and rise early to continue your journey." At first, they said, "No." "We will stay in the square for the night." But Lot insisted, urging them with kindness and concern. He knew the dangers of the streets after dark, so they followed him home. Lot prepared a meal, unleavened bread and simple food, and the angels ate in silence, while outside the city began to stir with whispers and footsteps. Night deepened. The stars hid behind drifting clouds. Then a knock on the door. A voice shouted, then another and another. Soon the whole street was filled with noise. Men from every part of Sodom surrounded the house, calling out to Lot, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us." Their voices were mocking, cruel, filled with wicked intent. Lot stepped outside, closing the door behind him. "Please, my brothers," he pleaded, "do not do such a wicked thing." But they laughed and pressed closer. The crowd grew violent. Then suddenly, a burst of light flared from within the house. The angels reached out, pulled Lot back inside, and struck the men outside with blindness. They stumbled in confusion, groping for the door they could no longer find, and the city, once loud with laughter, fell into chaos and fear. Inside, the angels turned to Lot with urgency. "Do you have anyone else here? Sons-in-law, sons, daughters, or anyone in this city who belongs to you? Get them out, for we are about to destroy this place. The outcry to the Lord against its people is so great that he has sent us to destroy it." Lot's heart raced. He ran to his sons-in-law, men who had married his daughters, and said, "Quickly, get out of this place. The Lord is about to destroy the city." But they only laughed. They thought he was joking. As dawn approached, the angels urged him again, "Hurry, take your wife and your daughters who are here, or you will be swept away when the city is punished." Lot hesitated, his heart torn between mercy and disbelief. But the angels, in compassion, took him by the hand, and his wife and his 2 daughters, and led them safely out of the city. For the Lord was merciful to them. The sky began to pale with morning light. The city lay behind them, silent and heavy. "Flee for your lives," the angels said. "Do not look back. Do not stop anywhere in the plain. Flee to the mountains, or you will be swept away." Lot begged, "Please, my lords, I cannot flee to the mountains. Let me escape to that little town over there. It is small, is it not?" The angel replied, "Very well. I will grant you this request." But hurry Lot ran, his daughters close behind, his wife following just a few steps back. Then, as they reached the small town of Zoar, the sun broke over the horizon, and behind them, heaven opened. From the sky, fire and burning sulfur rained down upon Sodom and Gomorrah. The cities that had once shone with lights and laughter were consumed in a storm of judgment. Mountains trembled, the air burned red, smoke rose from the plains like the breath of a furnace. And in that moment, Lot's wife, her heart still turned toward what she left behind, looked back, and she became a pillar of salt, frozen in the place where mercy turned to memory. From the hills, Abraham awoke early that morning. He looked toward the valley and saw smoke rising from the land like a great furnace. His heart broke, but he also understood that even in judgment, God's mercy had been at work. For Lot was spared, not because of his righteousness, but because God remembered Abraham's prayers. The story of the visitors in the city is not only one of wrath, it is one of grace, of warning, and of hope. The sky was gray and heavy with clouds. The smell of smoke hung in the air long before the first spark appeared. Lot stood at the edge of his house, his heart pounding, his ears echoing with the words of the angels. Flee for your life. Do not look back. Do not stop anywhere in the plain. Flee to the mountains, or you will be swept away. The city behind him, Sodom, was quiet, too quiet. He could feel something shifting in the air, a stillness before the storm. He turned to his wife and daughters. Their eyes were wide with fear, their hands clutching what little they could carry. "Come," Lot whispered, "we must go. Now." As the first light of dawn crept across the sky, the angels took hold of Lot's hands and those of his wife and daughters and led them out of the city gates. The streets were empty, the laughter of the night before replaced by the whispers of wind. Every step felt heavier than the last, as though the ground itself was weeping beneath their feet. When they reached the edge of the valley, one of the angels spoke again. "Flee to the mountains. Do not look behind you, for destruction is coming." But Lot, trembling, said, "Please, my lord, I cannot flee to the mountains. I am afraid disaster will overtake me and I will die. Look, there is a small town nearby. Let me flee there. It is small, isn't it?" The angel paused, then nodded. "Very well. I grant you this request, but hurry. I can do nothing until you reach that place." So the city was called Zoar, which means small. Lot and his family ran. The wind grew hot, the earth trembled. Behind them, the morning sky turned red, not with sunlight, but with flame. Suddenly, the heavens roared. Fire and burning sulfur rained down from the sky, lighting the valley like a furnace. The ground shook. The cities of Sodom and Gomorrah were swallowed in fire, their towers melting, their laughter silenced. The angel's warning became reality. The world behind Lot burned, and in that moment, Lot's wife turned. Just for a second, she looked back. The sight was too much, the memories, the home, the life left behind. And instantly she was frozen where she stood. Her body turned into a pillar of salt, a statue of sorrow, facing the ruins of all she once loved. When Lot reached Zoar, he collapsed upon the ground. His daughters held him, tears streaking their faces. Behind them, the horizon glowed with fire. The sky was filled with dark clouds, and the smell of sulfur stung the air. The once green valley was now a wasteland, but amid the ashes, Lot realized something. He was alive. Though he had lost much, God's mercy had not abandoned him. He remembered Abraham, his uncle's faith, his prayers for Sodom. Perhaps it was those prayers that had carried him through the fire. Far away on the hills of Hebron, Abraham rose early that morning. He looked toward the plains below where Sodom and Gomorrah once stood, and he saw smoke rising from the land like the smoke of a great furnace. The sun shone weakly through the haze, casting an orange glow over the mountains. Abraham bowed his head, his heart heavy but trusting. "The judge of all the earth has done what is right," he whispered. And though the cities were gone, God had remembered Abraham's prayer and spared Lot from the fire. Sometimes mercy looks like rescue, sometimes it looks like loss. Lot lost his home, his wealth, even his wife. But he was still held in the hands of God, for mercy doesn't always protect us from the storm. Sometimes it carries us through it. The fire faded. The wind grew quiet. The valley turned to silence once more. And in that silence, God's justice and mercy met, like two flames burning together in perfect balance. The first light of dawn crept over the valley. The air was heavy and dry, the horizon trembling with a faint red glow. Lot stood outside his home, the words of the angels still burning in his mind. "Hurry, take your wife and your daughters who are here, or you will be swept away when the city is punished." He looked toward the streets of Sodom, his city, his memories, his past. All around him, the air hummed with tension, as if the earth itself knew judgment was near. Inside the house, his wife gathered what little she could. Her hands trembled, not from haste, but from grief. Everything they had built, their home, their possessions, their friends, would be gone. Then came the knock, a sound that shook her heart. The angels entered, their faces calm but urgent. "Come," they said, "for the Lord's mercy is upon you." They took Lot by the hand, his wife and his 2 daughters, and led them through the silent streets. The city that once laughed and sang was eerily quiet. As they passed through the gate, the angels' words echoed once more. "Flee for your lives. Do not look back. Do not stop anywhere in the plain. Flee to the mountains, or you will be swept away." The words were clear, and yet they lingered like smoke in the air. They ran, their sandals beating against the earth, their breath quick and shallow. Behind them, the first rumbles of thunder rolled through the sky. Lot's wife stumbled once, catching herself on her daughter's arm. She looked ahead, but her thoughts were behind. The home she loved, the neighbors she knew, the laughter of the marketplace. It all called to her. Her heart wrestled between obedience and memory, between safety and sorrow. She could still smell the fires of their altar, the perfumes of the city. The life she had built, all of it was being swallowed by judgment. And though her feet moved forward, her soul remained behind. Then it happened. The heavens opened, and from the sky flames poured down like rivers of molten gold. Sodom and Gomorra were engulfed in fire. The mountains trembled, and the wind carried screams through the valley. The sky turned crimson, the ground quaked beneath their feet. The angels' voices rose above the storm. "Do not look back." Lot clutched his daughter's hands tighter, his eyes fixed on the path ahead. But his wife, her heart still chained to what was, slowed her steps. The roar behind her grew louder. Curiosity, grief, disbelief, it all swelled within her. And then she turned. In that single heartbeat, her eyes fell upon the burning city. The smoke, the fire, the home she once called safe, all consumed in flame. Her lips parted, perhaps to cry, perhaps to pray. But no sound came. A blast of searing wind swept over her. Her skin turned cold, her body still. And where she stood, she turned into a pillar of salt, frozen in the place of disobedience, a monument to a moment. The glance that cost her everything. Lot turned around. He called out her name, but only the wind answered. Tears filled his eyes. He wanted to run back, but the angel's hand held him firm. "Do not look back," the voice whispered again, softer this time, almost like grief. They reached the small town of Zoar as the morning sun broke through the smoke. The valley behind them burned, and Lot knew nothing would ever be the same. Lot's wife turned back, not with her feet, but with her heart. She longed for what was, even as God was leading her toward what could be. And so she became a symbol, a quiet warning whispered across generations. Do not look back when God is leading you forward. We all have our Sodom, the places, the habits, the memories we cling to. And sometimes God calls us to leave them behind. It hurts. It feels like loss. But ahead, there is mercy waiting. The night had ended, but the world was still covered in shadow. Lot stood on a hill overlooking the plain where Sodom and Gomorrah once stood. Now only smoke rose from the earth like morning incense, thick and gray, reaching toward the heavens that had judged them. He could not look long. The pain was too heavy, the silence too deep. His wife was gone, his home gone, everything familiar lost in the flame. And yet the sun rose anyway, a pale, trembling light stretching across the wasteland like a soft whisper. You are still alive. Lot and his 2 daughters walked in silence toward the small town called Zoar. It was quiet there, untouched by fire, as if grace had drawn a circle of mercy around it. They found a small dwelling, a place to rest their weary souls. Lot looked at his daughters, their faces streaked with dust and tears. He saw in them the last fragments of his family and felt both grateful and broken. That night, as they lay under the dim glow of the moon, no one spoke. The world had burned behind them, and all they could do now was breathe. For the first time in days, rain began to fall. Not fire, not brimstone, but water. It hissed softly as it touched the warm ground, smoothing the dust, cooling the earth, washing away the scent of smoke. Lot stepped outside, letting the drops fall upon his face. He lifted his eyes to heaven, and though he had no words, his heart whispered gratitude. Lord, I am still here. The rain was gentle, like heaven's way of saying, it is finished. But peace did not last in Zoar. Fear still clung to Lot's heart. He could not forget the fire, nor the trembling ground beneath his feet. And so he took his daughters and went up into the mountains. There, among the rocky cliffs and whispering winds, they found a cave, a lonely refuge. Days turned to weeks, and though the valley below slowly healed, Lot's heart remained heavy. He often sat at the cave's mouth, watching the sun rise and fall, the endless cycle of light and shadow. Each dawn reminded him, judgment had passed, but mercy had remained. One morning, the sky glowed in gold. The birds began to sing again, timidly, as if testing the silence of the world reborn. Lot's daughters prepared food, their laughter faint but returning. Life, fragile, small, was starting again. Lot smiled for the first time in a long while. He remembered the angel's hands pulling him from the flames, the voice that said, "The Lord's mercy is upon you." Those words echoed in his heart. Even in judgment, God had written a story of rescue. The dawn after the fire is a quiet dawn. It doesn't roar with celebration, it whispers with healing. Lot's story teaches us that survival itself can be a form of grace. Sometimes God doesn't restore what we lost. He simply gives us enough strength to begin again. When everything around you burns, your dreams, your comfort, your plans, God's mercy still finds a way to reach you. It may not come in a miracle. It may come as breath, as sunrise, as another chance to stand. The fire had ended. The smoke had cleared. And in the quiet that followed, mercy remained. Maybe you too have walked through fire, through heartbreak, loss, or regret. But tonight, remember Lot's story. The same God who brings the dawn after judgment can bring the dawn after your pain. Close your eyes now. Let the past rest in the ashes. Let the light of a new beginning rise upon your soul. Good night. And may you wake tomorrow to your own dawn after fire.